Albert.
Hi, Adam. How you doing?
I'm good. I like your wallpaper.
Thank you. Well, I gotta say, I love the movie. I watched it yesterday, and it just kept me intrigued. The whole story, I just kept going with it, like so much as like trying to figure out like what is going on in the film, and I was like, what's gonna happen next? It kept me on the edge of my seat, literally.
Oh, dude, I'm so glad. I don't know anymore because I've lived with it a very long time. So so
So
I'm
my
happy to
first
say
question,
that.
yeah. So my first question is, how did you come up with the film? I know it's based on a novel, but
Yeah.
how did that all come about?
A friend of mine, this guy named Puya Shabazian, sent me and my writing partner on this film, Bill Collage, a galley of a pre-publication novel called Book of Mirrors, written by a guy named Chirovici, who is a Romanian thriller author writing in English for the first time. And I was just really compelled by the book. Kind of exists in installments. The story is told by three different characters: a New York lit agent, a New York investigative journalist, and a homicide detective who has Alzheimer's. And I really latched on to the homicide detective with Alzheimer's because it's a story about revisiting the past. And so I thought that was a compelling lens through which to look at a murder mystery with a person who can't remember the case that they formerly investigated, because it puts them in like a really vulnerable position where they're interfacing with people who know them, but they don't remember. And
Right.
so it immediately puts them in a sort of friend or foe place and the viewer in a friend or foe place. So I was really drawn to that character. And so we reframed the entire narrative through the lens of that character, which isn't how it's told in the book. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it was you get to see it from his viewpoint, but then I like the fact that once he starts reading Richard's monologue, we get his viewpoint. So I like
Yeah,
how
right.
it transcends from from Roy to Richard, but then back to Roy, and more of everything. And I gotta tell you, man, Russell Crowe really brought the A game. I like that he's doing these more like smaller scale films because I feel like he's doing more of his best work here. What was it like working with Russell on this one?
It was an awesome experience. I mean, it was an exhilarating experience, which I guess you would say is equal parts exciting and terrifying. Um, um, I think that, working with an actor of Russell's caliber as a first-time filmmaker, I think in the thinking of it, like in the lead up, I think um, could feel kind of daunting because um, you know what his sort of expectations are in terms of excellence. So you want to, show up and deliver that. Um, but I think, it was like having like a very intelligent, practiced, um, kind of expert ally on your side in the making of the film. In terms of like directing Russell, like it was sort of setting the scene and knowing where I was going to put the camera, but like Russell doesn't need a lot of coaching. Like he does his work, he shows up prepared, ready to go. And he's kind of at least from my experience, like he's like a one take actor, Like sometimes I would feel like I guess I should do another one just because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But like Russell he just brings it. He has incredible camera awareness. He's not a method actor, so he's not busy keeping his entire body in in character or staying in character. Like he's very just aware of the frame and what he has to do within sort of the kind of the allotted frame space.
Mhm.
And I think consequently, there's sort of just a concentrated kind of performance that happens. Like, as you know from seeing the film, there's a lot of sort of tight work that's,
Yeah.
we're often very tight on him or wide on him. Um, and so, it was, he made my job a lot easier.
That's awesome. And Karen Gillan was great in this film too. I felt like, in a way, this was like a neo noir like film, and she was the femme fatale that you see in these type of movies. Like she was perfectly cast. Like she comes off as this very intelligent woman, and of course, we learn that something happens, and she's directly involved, and yet I loved her in this movie. She was fantastic. Well, it must have been great, like having her play these different this.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people kind of know her, as Nebula or from Jumanji. I think they know her for her sort of comedic chops. But I'd seen other things that she'd done sort of in a more dramatic capacity.
Yeah,
And I really like the idea of kind of casting against type for the part, given that I think people were going to go, oh, that's the femme fatale. The idea of sort of casting someone with sort of Karen's very specific pedigree, I think kind of creates its own story in the mind of the viewer outside of the part that she's playing. You know?
right. And I also liked Martin Sokas, who played Weeder, because he
Yeah,
reminded me of his character in the show Into the Badlands. He's the more like the suave, like he's comes up. He's kind of like the villain of the antagonist, if in a way, because even though it's him who got murdered, we
yes,
get to learn about him, and he is
right.
not a good guy. Like we gotta, he just like charms people, like, and that's what it reminded me of when he did Into the Badlands. He played like the Baron, who was all charming, but yet at the same time, he's very ruthless underneath the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah, Martin is the best. I mean, he went really, really deep on the character. I mean, very, very specific accent. He wanted to do something that was kind of, East Coast New York, sort of Bronx intelligentsia, kind
Yeah,
of. Like I think he talked about Alan Alda a little bit as sort of a vocal reference point. Um, so he was just such a pleasure, such a pleasure. They all were,
yeah,
all the actors. They were awesome, every one
that's
of them.
awesome. So, how long did production take, and were there any, this being your first film, were there any issues that you came across that you had to like go plan B with at all during production?
Yes, every single day there was an issue that required a plan B. We had 30 days, and not a day more. So if we didn't get it, we weren't going to get it. And in Australia, they shoot a 10-hour day, not a 12-hour day, and that's 10 hours inclusive of lunch.
Hmm.
And on days that we were working with Russell, Russell's in various iterations of a bald cap, right? So
Right.
even when he has the wool beanie on, underneath the wool beanie, he still has a bald cap that's been wrapped in order to prevent any of his hairline from coming out. So on any given day, he could be in makeup between 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending upon the different look. So sometimes on Russell days, we would only have him for, I don't know, 8.5 hours. Um, so I think, time was often an issue. Um, I think we were always racing, and I think that's probably true of any production. And then I think sometimes there were sort of limitations around locations. I mean, Roy's apartment in the film is as small as it looks. It had one doorway in the back and one doorway in the front, and you're moving a lot of big equipment. So I think there were practical issues
Yeah.
that we were frequently confronted by. There was only one day where I had to cut a scene.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and the beauty of it is you learn. It just puts you on your toes narratively. You learn what you can live without. Because I think you have ideas when you've written the material that, oh, you have to have this scene, but I think you surprise yourself in learning that you don't need everything that you think you need.
Well, I gotta tell you, man, this was a great first film for you. I mean, I think people who love the mystery noir type film and are going to be at the edge of their seats, because once it gets going, it's everyone's going to be engaged on what's next. Like they're going to wonder what's going to happen next. Who did this? Who did it? And you know, the final scene really like made my jaw literally drop to the ground, because I was not expecting how it ended, but it was such a fantastic ending. I mean, this was a perfect neo noir film in my opinion, hands down.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you so much.
So with
Thanks a
that
lot.
said, what's next? Is there, you going to be directing again after this? Do you have a project in the
Yeah, I'm
works?
working on I'm working on another script right now. That's kind of a sort of sophisticated kind of, I guess, sci-fi drama. I would call it. Doesn't seem like a sci-fi thing on its face, but it's sort of another story that has kind of identity at the center of it, of a character learning something about themselves that they did not know, but with broader implications than sort of Roy's journey in Sleeping Dogs. So,
That's
female, but and with a female protagonist.
all right. Awesome. Well, I hope that gets done, and I will definitely check that one out when it's all ready to go. Definitely.
Thanks, man. Thank
So
you.
Sleeping Dogs is coming out March 22nd. And if you guys want to see Russell Crowe as A Game again, but this time in a neo-noir thriller with an amazing cast, you're going to want to check out Sleeping Dogs. And Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Thanks, Albert.
All right, you take care.